A lone priest wanders a dangerous forest road where predators and monsters are known to roam. Bandits frequent this area as well, ambushing wagons that travel along the forest road. But the priest has faith that the gods will protect him during his travels. During the day, a wagon does approach, going the same way as the traveller. The wagon driver says, "Hop aboard, let me give you a lift through this dangerous land." The priest responds, "No thanks, I have faith that the gods will keep me safe." A little later on, a knight on horseback rides up to the traveller and says,
"Hail, I have a spare horse. Would you like to ride with me through the forest? You can keep me company, and I can keep you safe in case we run into danger."
The priest says, "No thank you, I have faith that the gods will keep me safe." The knight rides on. In the afternoon, a noble's armed escort passes the priest. One of the guards says,
"Our lord invites you to travel with them inside the carriage if you would like. It will soon be dark before you can reach the next town on foot, and there will be much danger on the road."
The priest responds, "No thank you. With greatest respect, I have faith that the gods will keep me safe." The escort shrugs and travels on. After dark, the traveller is ambushed by a pack of wolves and torn to shreds. When the priest's soul stands before the gods, he pleads, "I had faith. Why did you not protect me while I was travelling?" And the gods respond perplexedly,
"We sent you a wagon to ride in, a nobleman's armored escort to protect you, and literally a knight in shining armor to ride alongside. What further could you possibly have expected?"
Hello, my name is Ben Byrne, and this is what you need to know about running a dark fantasy D&D campaign. Religion and divine intervention are two very common tropes within the fantasy genre, especially a game like 5th edition D&D, where the will of the gods is literally being beamed into the head of the clerics and the paladins that may be the main characters in your story. But the problem with religion and divine intervention within a dark fantasy toned campaign is twofold. First, if the god's will is literally known by characters within the world, then there's no moral interpretation, there's no ambiguity or nuance in the conflicts because the gods have clearly sided with one side of this conflict. And second, a lot of the tension goes out of the campaign if the gods have the ability to literally manifest down onto the world and Deus Ex Machina fix every problem that the PCs are currently facing. In this video, I'm going to explain how to represent divine intervention or divinity and religion within a dark fantasy world. And there are 5 things that you should keep in mind. First is that the gods are distant. Second, religion is interpretive, and religion is also fallible, much like it is in the real world. 3, there is no cosmic alignment. Creatures are not born inherently good or inherently evil. Number 4, you still need to be able to explain divine magic. How do clerics and paladins manifest their magical abilities? And 5, there are exceptions to the rules which I will lay down. If you enjoy this video, make sure to give it a like, and if you want to follow along, subscribe to the channel because I'm coming out with more tips on how to run a dark fantasy D&D campaign every single week. In a dark fantasy campaign setting, the gods should be distant. And what I mean by that is literally they should be far away from the mortal realm. And you might explain this much like the Grim Hollow setting does, that the gods are dead, and so they're not able to manifest physically within the mortal realm.
Why are we alive when even the gods are dead?
Or the gods may still be very much alive within the mythologies of the story, but for whatever reason they can't manifest within the mortal realm.
The gloves are off, pal! Come on, let me see a little wrath. Smite me, oh mighty smiter!
They're literally distant. They don't speak into the heads of the paladins and clerics in their service. They exist to send signs that are to be interpreted. The stories that are written about them, their teachings are written down by other mortals. And this means that the gods can't manifest and literally divinely intervene in conflicts on the real world.
You cannot enter the house of God. God is not here.
They can't come and tell a paladin exactly what they need to do to be able to solve the issues that the paladin is facing. And once more, mortals can't travel to the gods' realms, to Mount Olympus, to Hades, to the Nine Hells, to seek the gods' advice. Travel to heaven or hell is not possible, except possibly through death. Maybe you have like some other realm travel, like to an ethereal plane or something like that. It's not that dimensional travel should be impossible, but it should be pretty rare within a campaign setting that is trying to capture a dark fantasy atmosphere. And it should also really not lead to the god's realm, because then everything we're talking about kind of goes out the window. Having distant gods within a dark fantasy campaign has a couple of effects. The first is that folks that want to be good are accountable for their own actions. They can't just fall back on my god told me to do it, therefore my actions are justified. This can often combat a murder hobo paladin, because you can be like, you're just acting the way that you want to. This has nothing to do with your god's will or not.
No, that peasant totally stole that loaf of bread, and my god says that stealing is bad, even if it is to feed a starving family.
No, but you like literally just walked up and stabbed him in the middle of the street.
Yeah, I mean, he was also carrying illicit goods, like this magic item, which he definitely stole as well.
You see what I mean? Like the player characters have to justify their own actions, and they can't get away with just saying my god told me to do it, because they're interpreting their god's will. You might send them signs as the dungeon master. If somebody cast augury in a game that I'm playing, and to be fair, the rules for augury indicate that the weal or woe, the sign that the players get from their gods, should be a sign, not an explicit telling of what the god thinks, but I'll often leave it very vague.
The riddles you speak, they have no real meaning. Your words can be interpreted in so many ways that they cease to cause comfort or knowledge, but rather confusion.
Because the god's will is interpreted by mortals, written down by mortals, and then read and reinterpreted by other mortals, this means that religion within a dark fantasy campaign can be fallible. Number 2. Religion is interpretation, and religious organizations are completely fallible. This next little bit of the video, I am going to reference real-world religions, and I hope that doesn't upset or offend anybody. If you think you might be sensitive to that sort of thing, feel free to skip ahead. We always timestamp our videos, but I want to use real-world religions to make a point about religion in a dark fantasy D&D campaign. And that is this, that religions are not static things that never change or never fracture, that not everybody who believes hypothetically or theoretically in the same deity are going to agree with each other on the interpretations of that deity's will.
A shoe! A shoe is the sign. Let us follow his example. What? Let us, like him, hold up one shoe and let the other be upon our foot, for this is his sign that all who follow him shall do likewise. Yes. No, the shoe is a sign that we must gather shoes together in abundance.
If we look at Christianity as what I hope is a non-controversial example, we have many different sects of Christianity: Presbyterian, Lutheran, Protestant, just to name a few. And all of these fundamentally, as far as I'm aware, believe in the same God, the same one God that is spoken about in the Christian Bible, but they have differing interpretations, differing beliefs on how that God should be worshipped, what the specific will of that God is. And so that means that they feel like they can't coexist necessarily together as part of one organization. So over years and generations, they have splintered off into smaller groups. The point that I'm making is that religion is, by its very nature in the real world, because God does not directly speak into the heads of anybody, or at least hasn't done so in a very long time, we don't know for sure what the will of the gods are. And even people throughout history who have claimed to be in direct contact with God are believed or not believed in different capacities, because they can't prove that it was definitely God who was speaking to them at the time.
Well, forgive us these smiles on our faces.
You'll know what power is when we are done, son.
And therefore, religion is interpretive and religion is fallible. And this is the way that it should be in a dark fantasy campaign as well. I'm going to step back from current real-world religions back to, let's say, Norse mythology, where we have Odin, the god of wisdom and the god of knowledge, and we have Thor, the god of thunder and the god of the seas and the god of storms. And you might have two groups of people that both believe in and worship Odin. But one group really emphasizes the wisdom part of Odin's teachings, that it is best to be wise. And you might have another group that believe that sacrifice is the greatest part of Odin's teachings, that he gave one of his eyes, that he hung himself from the Yggdrasil tree to learn the things that he learned. And so these two groups come into conflict because one believes sacrifice is more important and that the wisdom group aren't sacrificing enough, and the wisdom group believe that the sacrifice group are fools because they're pulling out their eyes or chopping off limbs in a hope to appease their god Odin.
I mean, ritual sacrifice isn't a perfect science, but I feel really confident about this one.
Okay.
And this is an example of how religion can function in a dark fantasy campaign, because maybe your campaign at the center of it features conflict between two good, aligned factions who have come into conflict, and you've got to sort this conflict out, even though there's no clear right or wrong person in this conflict. It's not a demon against a god. It is two religious orders that have interpreted the will of their god very differently. I also don't think it's a particularly controversial thing to say that religion has been used throughout human history to justify horrible acts.
Spent these last years disciplining anyone who disagrees with our line on divorce, on birth control, on being gay. While our planet was being destroyed, while inequality grew like a cancer.
And good aligned religious orders actually make for really great antagonists in dark fantasy campaigns, because maybe they've interpreted the will of their god incorrectly, maybe they've interpreted one specific aspect of their god's teachings as an absolute, maybe they believe that all mages are cursed and all mages are going to bring about the calamity of humankind and are corrupting the spirits, so they release an arcanist inquisition to hunt down every mage, whether they've done good, bad, or they've been completely benign in the actions that they have undertaken in their life. And this can make for great conflict in your campaign. What if you have a warlock who knows that they will inevitably turn evil because of the need that their patron has of them to murder someone at least once a week and make a blood sacrifice, or they lose all their power? And the warlock is doing so with the best of intentions. Again, maybe the warlock doesn't know that the demon exists, and so they're just interpreting the will of their demon to be able to keep their power, and now the Arcanist Inquisition is after them, is hunting them down for their evil deeds. Maybe you have someone in the party who was a sorcerer born into magical power, they have no real way of controlling their gifts, they're a chaos sorcerer, and now the Arcanist Inquisition are hunting them down for what the Arcanist Inquisition believe to be good reasons, but the player character nonetheless is hypothetically innocent of any crime until now. Number 3, no cosmic alignment. The alignment chart, strap yourselves in, I don't really like it a lot. And the reason is because it is often used as prescriptive rather than descriptive. If the alignment chart is descriptive, I have no real problems with it, but if it's being used prescriptively, then it becomes a little bit jarring for me in the campaigns that I try to create. And the difference between those two things, if you've never heard that term before or those terms before, is that the alignment chart is prescriptive, it is prescribing the alignment of a specific creature as lawful good, chaotic evil, lawful neutral, neutral good, whatever it happens to be. If it's descriptive, you say, my character is typically lawful good. They will follow the laws of their deity, seeming we're talking about religion, but they are fallible. They may move outside of that and make a chaotic action based on an emotional reaction that they're having.
I got carried away.
And you know, kind of using the alignment chart as descriptive and then otherwise mostly forgetting about it means that characters can act in interesting, nuanced ways, and they don't need to feel like they're breaking their character because they have, you know, acted chaotically when they should always act lawfully because the alignment chart tells them to do so. The alignment chart and the prescriptive alignments, which is often referred to as cosmic alignments, often is tied to religion, is tied to deities within the D&D world, and it says that because this deity, be it a good deity, the god of elves, or an evil deity, the god of goblins or orcs, made the creatures that worships them, god of orcs created the orcs, all the orcs are evil because that deity is evil. All the devils that surround that deity are evil. All the angels that surround a good aligned deity are all good, and they cannot be born any other way because they are aligned with that deity. And this removes nuanced conflict. It removes the opportunity of two good sides coming into conflict with each other, because in theory, if they're both good aligned, they should like each other. But that basically ignores how human beings in the real world tend to act around stuff. Folks that believe in fundamentally the same thing may still come into conflict with each other. I like to remove the cosmic alignment because it also removes the justification that folks have. I've been saying this a few times in this video as well. I killed this orc because I'm justified in doing so because not only has my god told me to do so, but this orc is inherently evil because it is aligned with the god that made it. And that is just a cop-out. To be like, I get to kill it and stay morally clean because my god said that I could. I also think that cosmic alignment often treats different creatures like they're automatons, like they don't have any real will of their own. And it also creates a hierarchy of different creatures. Elves are better than orcs, and dwarves are hypothetically better than goblins because goblins and orcs are evil aligned and elves and dwarves are good aligned. And that's just kind of a messed up way of thinking about the world. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Everywhere I go, live orcs always gotta be the bad guys.
Wizards of the Coast recently came out and said that 5th edition has its own canon, and they've changed the way that they write stat blocks to say that a creature, where it says the alignment under the name of the creature, it says typically evil, typically good, typically whatever the alignment happens to be. And I think that's a great change because it creates much more nuanced and interesting conflicts. Both sides might be evil. I don't really mean both sides are evil. I guess what I mean to say is both sides have done evil things, but the party have to choose who they side with on some capacity, but they have reasons to do so beyond just being automatons that their god has dictated to them that they must do evil things. So to capture the atmosphere of a dark fantasy campaign, you definitely shouldn't use the alignment chart as something that is prescriptive. Angels are not divinely good because their god created them to be good. And in fact, I love this idea, sidebar, of angels can easily become demons, or demons can easily become angels when their minds change about something. Number 4, you need to be able to explain divine magic. If clerics have the power to heal the sick and paladins have the power to magically smite the wicked, does not this innately prove the existence of the gods by the very existence of these folks who can manifest divine magic? Well, not necessarily. And there are a couple of ways that you can tackle this in a dark fantasy campaign to keep that feeling of the gods feeling distant and like they're not interfering in mortal affairs or are incapable of doing so. The first is not my favorite, but it's an option, and that's simply to remove the paladin or the cleric as player options when they're creating their characters. And the reason I'm not a fan of this is while I think the DM has a lot of purview to negotiate what the players can choose from when they're creating their characters, for example, I don't think some of the more anthropomorphic races such as the Aarakocra and the Tabaxi and the Gif necessarily fit a dark fantasy vibe. However, if you start to take away too many player options, and I think getting into some of the core classes of the game and removing them as options from the campaign, especially if your players haven't communicated that this is okay earlier, you might start to restrict some of their desire to play in the game because they don't feel like they get to create their own character. They feel like they're too restricted in what they can choose from.
Okay. Fine. You guys win. Congratulations.
The alternative option is to say, look, you can play a paladin, a knight who has taken vows and has paladin-like virtue. What we're going to do is we're going to create a knight, a fighter, and you call yourself a paladin and everybody believes that you're a paladin, but you don't actually have innate magic. You're more like a knight errant. Or perhaps you take the Eldritch Knight subclass and you're able to manifest your divine magic that way, but it's really the fact that you've studied religious texts and you're more of a wizard than you are necessarily innately just pulling magic out of thin air. The other option is to say that, no, there are clerics and paladins within this campaign setting and they are you. You are the cleric. You are the one who has appeared on the mortal realm, capable of manifesting divine magic, and you are the one who is giving hope to everybody else that the gods actually do exist. You are a prophet put on the mortal realm to talk on behalf of the gods, or at least that they believe they're drawing magic from the gods. Or it's possible that their sheer force of will is what is drawing the magic forth from the world. Force of personality, particularly in the case of a paladin who has charisma as their spellcasting stat. Maybe that is what creates magic. Just the fact that they believe that they can heal people allows them to heal people. Any of these explanations, or all of these explanations, could be given to the players, and therefore they don't really know for certain. Therefore, their characters must have true faith that the gods do exist and that they are, in fact, doing the Lord's work. It's also not rare for demons and devils to exist within a dark fantasy campaign. Beings that crawl out of the underworld and try to corrupt mortal souls before dragging us down into a hellish afterlife. And if there are, in fact, demons and devils, does this not prove the existence of a god because there must be angels and seraphs as well?
What's better than a devil you don't know? A devil you do.
Well, not necessarily. Literally thinking about that while making this video made me realize that in a similar vein to discovering that the gods are only eldritch beings that don't care that we exist, a similarly horrible realization might be that there is only a hell. There is only one place for souls to go into the afterlife, and the only solace that your party can bring to the world is the small pieces of happiness that they experience while they are on the mortal realm, before they are going to be dragged into the inevitable hell that all souls are doomed to fall into. And I think that's actually a pretty cool premise for a dark fantasy campaign. It also makes the fear of death much more palpable. And so just because there aren't gods doesn't mean you can't have other supernatural, godlike beings existing in your campaign, most probably to challenge the party or create an overarching fear of existential dread because there is an inevitable darkness closing in around the world. Number 5, exceptions to the rule. Many rules do have exceptions, and when it comes to dark fantasy, if the rule is that the gods are distant, dead, or non-existent, there is at least one notable example I can certainly think of. If you've ever read the works of H.P. Lovecraft, you know that the characters within have discovered a horrifying truth, and that is that the gods do, in fact, exist, but they are not the gods the characters thought of, and certainly not the gods they wanted. In the works of H.P. Lovecraft, the gods are such distant, alien, eldritch, ancient beings that humanity is an insignificant blink before them. If they're even aware of our existence, they don't care about us at all and will happily see us destroyed if it means that their machinations are fulfilled. This is fantastic fodder for a dark fantasy campaign. In fact, you could create a dark fantasy campaign where the only deities are those based on Lovecraft's mythos. In that case, you might indeed exclude paladins and warlocks from being in the party, but you might say if you want to be a religious figure, be a warlock. have a pact with an ancient god, or perhaps you draw on the power of the ancient being without that god even realizing you exist. Instead of religious orders, you have cults that are desperate to be noticed by their deity and make all manner of sacrifices and terrible rituals in the hopes that they will be spared from the oblivion that their god has doomed them to. And that's it. That is how I run deities and religions within my dark fantasy D&D campaigns. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be back next week giving even more ideas about how to run a dark fantasy D&D campaign. Until then, see you next time.